My dog Farley recently fractured a tooth and had to have it removed. And as a first-time pet owner, I had a lot of anxiety around the whole situation. How did it happen? How long did I miss it? Questioning what I should do every step of the way. Worrying about the procedure itself. How long would it take? How much would it cost? My mind was all over the place and I was a mess worrying about my sweet little girl for weeks. Well, now that it's over and she's okay, I wanted to make a video kind of documenting everything, taking you through it with me every step of the way. So hopefully if you're ever in the same situation with your dog and you come across this video, you can see how it went for us and hopefully it helps to ease some of your anxiety. All right, Farley, should we get into it? It's really sweet that she's here hanging out with me. Most of the time she is my little shadow, but I have like the tripod and a ring light out, and sometimes when that stuff's out, she kind of like runs away because she knows it's usually time for her to do something and for me to like take pictures or videos of it. But it's really sweet that she's hanging out with me today. I'm really happy. She's so sweet. Okay, so I'm gonna start from the very beginning and talk about how I found her fractured tooth. So I actually saw it when she was yawning. I was probably like in there petting her and giving her kisses, and she yawned and I could see it like kind of from underneath. I could see there was a little bit of discoloration on her tooth. It was one of her back molars. Yeah, so I saw that it was discolored and there was just a little like hairline, like I could see it fractured. So I don't really know how long it was there. It's not like there was like an instant where it cracked and everything changed. But once I saw it, I realized there was like a bunch of clues for the days leading up to that should have told me to take a closer look. The main one that I can remember was a change in the smell of her breath. She's a very affectionate dog. She gives us a lot of kisses. So I'm very used to the way her breath smells, and it's usually pretty neutral. But for a few days leading up to that, I just remember it smelled a little off. I wish I'd just given it more thought, but I didn't. I was just like, oh, that's weird. The other thing that I kind of thought of after was there was a little change in her behavior. Like, she's normally a pretty anxious dog. She'll get scared of random things, but it was just more than normal. She was just more anxious than she usually is and scared of things that she wouldn't normally be scared of. The one incident that stands out in my mind, I pulled out a measuring tape to measure her for a new bed that we're getting, and she was so scared of this tape measure that she ran downstairs and peed on the couch. And that's not something she's ever done before, so I should have been like, oh, I wonder what's going on with her. Why is she being so scared? But I just was like, oh, that's a weird thing. And the last thing was when I was brushing her teeth. So I brush her teeth. I try and brush her teeth every day. And I remember one day I was brushing her teeth on that side, and I was kind of brushing her back molars, and she gave out a little yelp. And of course, now that I think about it, I'm like, obviously I should have like inspected to see if there was something wrong, but I thought she was just being dramatic. Like, I don't know. Yeah, looking back on all those things, I should have put it together and gone in and inspected it and seen if there's anything wrong, and I didn't, but I did eventually catch it. So yeah, I'm trying not to be too hard on myself. I missed a few things, but I did eventually catch it. Some other things that you could look out for that might indicate a problem is a change in appetite. So Farley didn't have any change in her appetite. She was eating and drinking normally. Obviously, like blood. So Farley didn't have any visible blood coming out of her mouth. Those are things that you might also look out for or experience with your dog that might indicate like, okay, I should take a closer look and see what's going on. Okay, so after I saw the fractured tooth, I called the vet right away. They didn't have an appointment available until 3 days later. And they did ask, is this an emergency? Like, is she not eating or drinking water? And I said, no, she's still eating and drinking normally. And they were like, okay, so she can come in 3 days when we have an availability. So that's what we did. I switched her to soft food right away until we could get into the vet to take a look at her closer. So on the day of her appointment, Farley already hates going to the vet. She hates it so much. Add on the fact that she was in pain and like being more fearful of things in general. It was just really not a good time when I had to take her into the vet that morning. She wouldn't go in by herself. I eventually had to like pick her up and carry her inside, and she was just not doing well. I felt really bad for her. Once we got in to see the vet, basically I just like showed them her tooth and they just confirmed that it was fractured. Like I said, it was one of her back molars on this side, and it was fractured kind of like this direction. So there was like a front flap of her tooth that kind of was like, it was cracked this way, so it kind of like had a flap that went up like that. She said that it's one of the, I think it is the biggest tooth in their mouths. Like it has 3 separate roots. From there, we basically discussed what the options were with the fractured tooth. So the first one would be doing nothing. So basically leaving the fractured tooth in her mouth, which is not a good option because she's in pain. I mean, it's not impacting her ability to eat and drink yet, but it obviously was causing her pain based on like her behaviors. And it's also leaves her susceptible to infection. Like if the tooth gets infected and goes up through the root and into her face. I don't know. I'm not a vet. Yeah, leaving it in there was basically not an option. So the other 2 options were either root canal or tooth extraction. The root canal is the more expensive option, and because we live in a small town, we live in Canmore, they don't do that here locally. So if we wanted to go with a root canal, we'd have to go see a specialist in Calgary. And I'm not exactly sure, I can't remember what a root canal is, but it kind of leaves part of the tooth in place, and they go in and like remove something in the root. I don't know exactly. But anyways, because part of the tooth is still in place, there's no guarantee that in the future it might still fracture further and may result in having to get the tooth removed anyways. And then the other option was just removing the tooth in the first place. So it is a less expensive procedure. They can do it locally here in town. And the vet said basically like domestic dogs, they aren't out like hunting for their food. They're basically eating food that we provide for them. So when I asked her like, is Farley gonna miss having that tooth? She was like, she can live like a full happy life without having that tooth. So basically, yeah, because of price and location and risk of future complications, I decided to go with the tooth extraction. The procedure for getting a tooth extracted, it requires the dog to go under anesthesia. Yeah, I kind of just had to get comfortable with it. Like they can't do the extraction without putting a dog under anesthesia because, you know, a human can lay there with their mouth open and let a dentist pull out a tooth, but a dog's not going to do that. So yeah, that was probably my biggest concern about the whole thing, was having her go under. And yeah, it's scary as a pet parent, but you got to do what you got to do. I sucked it up and I opted for doing extra blood work on her in the morning before the surgery, just so they can check if there's anything else that shows up that might cause her to be more susceptible to like having issues with the anesthesia. Yeah, so the next thing that happened is the vet gave me a cost estimate. Basically, she gave me a range. So like there were options in there, like if I wanted the extra blood work done in the morning before the procedure. She also suggested if she's going under for this surgery, oftentimes they suggest getting like a full dental x-ray as well, to check all the teeth and make sure that there's no issues, and then doing a full dental cleaning. The other things that contributed to the range was like how long it takes for the tooth to come out. They said if the tooth is healthy, it can be harder to remove, and because this tooth had like 3 separate roots, it was a bit more complicated. So yeah, basically she gave me a range, and it was anywhere from like $1,500 to like $3,500. This is in Canadian dollars because I'm in Canada. So she gave me those options to consider, and the prices for them. And then we booked the dental extraction for the week after. They weren't able to fit us in any earlier, so we had kind of a week for me to be anxious about the whole thing until it happened. So during that week between the vet appointment and the surgery, basically the only thing I had to do was like keep her on a soft food diet so that, you know, to minimize pain for her while she's eating, and also minimize like any kind of mouth stuff like tugging. We couldn't play frisbee or ball. She doesn't really play with other dogs, but if she did, like any rough play that could cause further damage to her tooth, just kind of taking it easy for the week. And then the day before the surgery, she had to fast for 12 hours, so no food and water for the 12 hours leading up to it. So we gave her dinner and water the night before, and then it was no food for the rest of the night. And into the next day. So the morning of the tooth extraction, I asked the vet if I could give Farley some anxiety medication, just because of how she responded last time I took her into the vet, where she was very worked up and fearful and didn't want to go in. And the vet said that would be fine. It wouldn't interfere with the procedure at all. So we have anxiety meds for her on hand. We used them when we traveled with her at Christmas. We took her on a flight. Let me see what they were. So we have gabapentin and trazodone for her. We gave those to her 2 to 3 hours before we went into the vet. And because she was fasting, I had to give them to her dry, which was an experience. I basically had to like pry her mouth open, drop all the pills in, and then hold her mouth closed and just like wait for her to kind of go like and like swallow them. And then after that happened, she was kind of like on edge. She knew something was different about that day because she didn't get breakfast. I had shoved pills down her throat, but luckily the pills did kick in. She was pretty like chill that morning. We took her for her regular morning walk, took her for pee and poo, and then took her into her appointment. So when we got to the vet that morning, her appointment was at 8 o'clock, and she actually did walk into the vet perfectly fine this time, so I credit the anxiety meds for that. I did opt for the extra blood work, the full x-ray on all of her teeth, and the full cleaning. I'm very easily upsold. But I think it makes sense. Like if she's already going under, might as well check all the teeth, clean them all, and just get that all done while she's already under. And yeah, I had to leave her there, which was like really scary. Just like leaving her somewhere strange by herself and knowing she's like in pain and worked up and doesn't know what's going on. Yeah, it felt pretty shitty. And then I had to come home and keep myself occupied until they called to tell me that she's okay. The appointment was around 7 hours total. We dropped her off at 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 1, 2, 3. Yeah, so they called at 2, which was 6 hours later, and said like she was awake, the anesthesia was wearing off. They wanted to keep her for 1 more hour, so 3 o'clock. 7 hours total. So at 3 o'clock we could go and pick her up. And that's when like the weight just came off of me. I was just like so happy that it was over. She was coming home and everything was gonna be okay. So we went to pick her up and she was so dopey. The total cost for everything ended up coming to $2,200 Canadian. It was actually lower than I expected. I expected it to be more like $3,000 or higher. So yeah, $2,200 wasn't bad. So we don't have pet insurance for Farley. That's just a choice we made. So I don't know if we did have pet insurance, if that would have been covered or how much of it would have been covered. I hope it would have been covered, but yeah, we don't have pet insurance, so I can't speak to that. Then we brought Farley home. In the evening after the procedure, she was mostly just pretty dopey, kind of eyes glazed over. She did have a patch on her arm shaved for the IV. Oh, she had to pee quite a lot, and they said that's normal after a dog's been like on IV fluid. So we had to take her out to pee quite a bit, even though she hadn't like ate or drank anything. And one of the main things I noticed is like how white her teeth look after. I know her teeth were quite bad before. I always did my best with brushing her teeth and stuff, but I didn't start until she was about... I didn't start really taking care of her teeth until she was like 1 year old. And by that time, a lot of the staining and plaque buildup had already happened. So I think I did a good job at maintaining it, but the dental cleaning like got all of that off, and her teeth are beautiful and white now. I'm so pumped. So I'm gonna try my best to maintain her white teeth now. I'm gonna keep up with the brushing and the dental chews and stuff. So we brought her home. She was dopey, peed a lot. Her teeth look super white. We did give her a small meal that night. I guess as a dog's coming off anesthesia, they can be a little bit nauseous. So yeah, we just gave her a little bit of food and just like monitored her to make sure that she didn't throw up. They said that by the next day, all the anesthesia should be worn off and she should be back to her normal self. As of today, it's been 1 week since her tooth was extracted. And what the aftercare has been like for that first week was we had to maintain her diet of soft food. So starting tomorrow, I can start to reintroduce her kibble. Farley, honey. And then for the first 3 days with her breakfast, we had to give her pain medication. So this is meloxicam. And it came in these little syringes that I would just like squeeze into her food. Yeah, so that was the first 3 days with breakfast, but we haven't had to do that for a while. So we haven't reintroduced toothbrushing or dental chews yet. And we've also kind of like limited any heavy activity or rough like playing with her mouth. Just while the stitches are healing. So when we go on walks, we have to make sure she's not chewing on sticks. We haven't been going for like hikes or runs. We haven't been playing ball or frisbee, which is like probably the saddest thing for her. The vet also suggested that in the first week, we stay kind of close to home in case there's any complications, like if a stitch comes open or if it gets infected. If anything happens and we have to take her into the vet, they just wanted us to be close to home. So we did have a camping trip planned this past weekend that we ended up having to cancel, which it sucked, but it was the right thing to do. Yeah, it's annoying that we had to cancel something that we had planned and that we were looking forward to, but it's just not worth it. If anything were to happen and we needed to get to the vet quickly, like, it's just not worth it. As for her recovery, the next day after the procedure, I could just tell she felt so much better. Like she was back to herself. I don't even want to say she was back to herself. She was better than back to herself. Like she had a pep in her step that I haven't seen definitely since before I found her fractured tooth, but maybe even before that, which makes me wonder, how long was that tooth really bothering her? Like just going out on walks, you can tell she's so happy. She's strutting around. When she sees her friend dogs, she's like being super playful with them. I can just tell that there's like so much relief in her since that tooth was removed. So I'm really glad that we did it, as hard as it was to go through. I can tell she's just like feeling so much better, and that makes it all worth it for me. So going forward for the next week, like I said before, the soft food diet is over, so we can start reintroducing kibble. We still have to avoid the toothbrush and dental chews for another week, just because her mouth might still be a little bit sensitive and we don't want to create any aversion to those things. One more week and then I can get back to like regular toothbrushing and dental chews for her. So yeah, a week from now, this will all be in the rearview mirror. Life will be back to normal. Well, almost back to normal, because I guess there are some key takeaways that I've learned from this whole experience. Basically, I will not be giving Farley any hard chews anymore. So like any bones, antlers, even Bena bones, which she loves, but I'm gonna have to go through the house and get rid of them all because it's just not worth it for what we went through. If I'm gonna give her chews in the future, it's gonna be things that soften as she chews them. So like bully sticks, collagen sticks, dental chews, stuff like that. And I'm gonna continue with the daily toothbrushing, or daily as much as I can. One, for her dental health and like maintaining those pearly whites, but also to inspect her mouth and see if there's anything going on. And not just inspecting like the front teeth, but also like pulling back her lips and inspecting the back molars as well. Okay, so I think that's everything I wanted to share. I'm just so happy we're through it, and my sweet little Farley girl is back to her normal self with all that pain from her tooth. And I hope if you ever find yourself in the same situation with your dog and you're feeling a bit overwhelmed and anxious about it, that this video showing our experience can help ease your anxiety a little bit and help you prepare for what to expect. So thanks for being here and watching this video. If you liked it, I would love if you gave it a thumbs up and a comment. We share new videos every Thursday about pet parent life, our mountain adventures with Farley, and behind the scenes of living with a professional Instagram dog. So if any of that sounds interesting to you, please consider subscribing, and we will see you next week. Do you want to do a bye with me? Goodness, you are so warm right now. Bye! Oh my goodness, you are such a baby. Oh my goodness. Bye!